Right, let's bring the conversation into studio now. As you heard, the Deputy Chief Justice said to update the nation on progress made so far. The inquiry was granted that final extension to complete its work by March. It's been reported that the Commission's work actually cost taxpayers in the region of about 700 million rand since it began. The inquiry was set to investigate allegations of state capture, corruption and fraud in the public sector and other organs of state. For more on the way forward, if we dare try look forward, let's bring in Tumaole Mohlaoli, who's been watching the story for quite some time now. Tumaole, it's great to have you in studio. I don't even know where to start really, but perhaps the beginning is a good place, right? A lot of critique has been given about the scope of the inquiry and just how much we're actually being overwhelmed by the information we're getting. Now that we're here, how best can the Deputy Chief Justice try to distill that in the address he's likely to give later today?
Well, I think what is also important is that in his address, the Deputy Chief Justice will then try to make sense of the timeframes and the depth of the Commission of Inquiry's investigations. We have seen with the various investigation lines, including at Power Utility, Eskom, and at SAA, that they don't only follow the evidence or lead evidence of the principals themselves, including ministers, board chairpersons, etc. They also go down the line to people who are beneath them to try and corroborate or to try and basically go against the evidence that has been led. This is trying to get a broader picture and find out exactly where the truth lies. So this is going to have quite an effect, if it carries on in this way, in terms of the deadlines.
So in other words, it almost feels like we were inevitably going to go down a rabbit hole if we wanted to account for all the allegations mentioned and the counter-corruption claims that came up in the inquiry.
Absolutely, and I think this is very evident in the posture of Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo. At various intervals, you would hear him almost speaking to himself to saying that the Commission is running out of time, and sometimes also trying to lead witnesses on, guiding the evidence leaders to say, look, let's not explore a certain line of questions. The Commission is under pressure. Had it not been for COVID-19, one wonders if the Commission of Inquiry would have perhaps even extended its scope, because now looking at parastatals and also the good work that's been done in the provincial government, one that comes to mind is, of course, the Free State provincial government in the asbestos saga, and of course the extension of a housing contract, which was given and people were paid advance payments for no work done.
One of those many startling allegations that really has had a ripple effect on the news cycle, at least. The other, I call it unfinished business of the inquiry, has to do with the former president. It almost feels like there's this complete loose end, and no one really has an idea of how it's likely to unfold come early next year, considering, again, that March deadline. Can the Commission hold on to its credibility without the voice of the former president, do you think?
I think the simple answer, in my humble opinion, would be no, because we have heard numerous witnesses across various evidence streams, from officials within provincial government, from officials within state organizations, state-owned organizations, basically name-dropping. And one of the names, of course, that comes center stage is that of former President Jacob Zuma, because as head of state, the buck would have stopped with him. As head of state, he should have known what was going on when officials were acting in a wayward manner. Officials didn't even know of an existence of a Public Finance Management Act, which would be shocking for an HOD, never mind an MEC at that level. So certainly without his testimony and evidence, he has to be given an opportunity to defend himself so that the Commission of Inquiry can look at the holistic picture and then make its recommendations and final report.
At some stage, there was a point where it felt like the former president's name and that of the Guptas was synonymous. I get a sense that we've kind of lifted the pedal insofar as making the Guptas accountable for the alleged ways in which they were involved in state capture. You've been following this inquiry till the very end. I mean, how much of the Gupta's name do you feel is still central to us understanding where the past few years have gone?
A very important observation you make it there, Ayanda. The Gupta's name is indeed very central to the whole idea in terms of the evidence that we've seen of state capture. Because at every turn you would find the Guptas, exerting influence over ministers who are supposed to be the political heads, if you like, of state-owned enterprises. You'd have the Guptas interfering in meetings where they weren't supposed to actually be present at all. And this begs the question then of how far their reach is. Even Gupta enforces. I didn't know much about Salim Essa, the name Salim Essa, but at every turn you find this Salim Essa being mentioned by witnesses who have testified before the Commission of Inquiry on various evidence streams, what he was doing at particular meetings, engaging with ministers when he had no portfolio or he had no mandate, begs the question of just how far of an influence the Guptas had and how far of a reach under the tenure of Jacob Zuma that they were allowed.
Yeah, and those operatives, coming into the public domain through, for a large part, the courage, if you like, of whistleblowers. I'm interested to find out what the conversation has been around those individuals who felt, yes, we don't have halos over our heads, but we want to speak out. I mean, do we know what their futures look like come post-March, when it feels like everything will be wrapped up and life gets back to some semblance of normality?
Yes, I think life for some of the whistleblowers certainly changed the minute they turned whistleblower. Many, including Suzanne Daniels, for instance, were forced out of their employ and lost their jobs. And this has had a personal impact on her life and many others who were brave enough to come forward and become whistleblowers. But then again, the Commission of Inquiry has also made it easier, if you like, for those with information to come forward by offering them the opportunity to testify in camera, meaning that their identities can be withheld. Now, the tricky part here, if you remember the testimony of Dudumien, where witness X, and after having received strict instruction not to name witness X, what did Dudumien do? She went ahead on a tirade and named him several times, and you could see just the look of utter shock and dismay. Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo trying to stop her, and of course there will be consequences. But when you speak about the witnesses, they are critical to the work of the Commission of Inquiry. Yes, you have the evidence leaders and the Commission of Inquiry's own investigators who do great work. They go digging up bank statements and records and emails and such things. But the witnesses, the people who were there at the meetings, the people who were there and witnessed something happening that was untoward, coming forward and saying, as patriots, this is what we know and this is what happened, is indeed very important.
Indeed. You speak about the Deputy Chief Justice's reaction at different stages of this process. I remember him being particularly disappointed by the amount of people who haven't taken up the invitation to come forward and speak out in some respects. Has he been in a position, do you think, to kind of give us an idea of what this means essentially for the findings of the commission? The fact that there are still a few gaps and people who would have expected to jump at the opportunity to clear their names simply haven't done that.
Yes, what the commission has done in terms of those who are seen as principals, ministers and former board chair people like Dudumien, for instance, again, they were subpoenaed to come forward if they offered some resistance. The same thing happened to former President Jacob Zuma himself. So the commission really showing no favoritism when it felt that someone's evidence was key to an evidence stream or key to its investigation. If someone did not want to participate, then they would go the legal route and compel them, kicking and screaming, so to speak, to come in and give evidence. But again, I remember Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, I think it was within the Free State investigations into the housing allegations of corruption there in asbestos and other matters. He kept on repeating almost to himself, saying that the commission does not have enough time. It seems as if the rot, so to speak, extends so far that the scope and the time that it has as a commission of inquiry just will lapse before it even touches the tip of that iceberg.
And perhaps it was naive of the South African public and everybody else who had all their hopes pinned on the commission to expect this one inquiry to solve all its issues. And so perhaps as we wrap up, I mean, you followed this for months now, and it almost feels like we're approaching the end of an era, isn't it? What do you think ought to be the salient issues the Deputy Chief Justice hones in on when he speaks to the nation later today?
Well, I think one of the issues would be the issue of just how much accountability would have to be put squarely to the former President Jacob Zuma. Former President Jacob Zuma himself has said on many occasions that he feels that this is a witch hunt, that he could not possibly have had a say in every single decision that went against the law. that basically facilitated state capture. This is his view. And I think that the Deputy Chief Justice will give a context of what the Commission has tried to achieve in terms of its scope of investigation. And we have seen that scope being broadened. Some witnesses have gone so far to say that it has overextended its reach and has gone beyond its key mandate. But again, when evidence comes up and some of these very explosive testimonies come through, the Commission of Inquiry is compelled to then probe those and put them to the test through its evidence leaders. And they've been doing a great job, some of them being very confrontational. It's made for great television for those of us who did not understand legal processes. And some of the witnesses too have been incredulous. You have characters that come to mind, people like Nzeku, for instance.
Yes. Who couldn't remember
when he was married.
When he got married, even though it was just a few years ago.
That's one of the things.
Okay, and we'll leave it there.
Let's not be controversial.
Right, Tumaole Mohlaoli, watching what I feel really has been a gift that's just kept on giving, for better or for worse. Of course, the State Capture Commission of Inquiry really approaching the home stretch of its work. Deputy Chief Justice giving what is expected to be a wide-reaching update later today. Tumaole Mohlaoli watching that story for us as it develops.